using your outreach for good, to connect with people.
Well, you know, I feel a really big responsibility. Like if you have this kind of job and you have an opportunity to have a profile where people are listening to what you're saying, I really, truly think you need to be saying something that's valuable. So yes, you can talk about, like, where did Rachel get that pencil skirt? Fine, sure. We can have that conversation. But I'd also like to talk about
women's rights.
Women's rights, and like my work with UN Women or with World Vision or humanitarian trips, or just really bolstering self-esteem that has nothing to do with the external. And so for me, that's been really important. And that's a great part of social media for me, is being able to see where that's landing. And also that these young women, like she was just saying, Sol, who's in Brazil, who I've never met, these girls connect with each other by way of, yeah, which I love that. I feel really grateful for that.
And not for nothing, but your recipes are really easy to follow too.
And you can get
they're very visual. Like it's not like this long, daunting list where you're like, oh my God, where do I find this coriander? It's literally, I love how you do the pictures.
Oh, I'm glad, the boards, the ingredient boards.
Is it what, like the Pinterest? It's like a Pinterest board, right?
Yeah, kind of, sort of. Yeah, I made them for the TIG, and it's great because it just sort of lets you see visually, like,
We pick up where Harry's wife receives some fuel from the interviewer, admiring her for her outreach. Harry's wife then gets on her soapbox to talk about, I feel a real responsibility with people listening, that you need to be saying something that's valuable. Well, of course, this is all about Harry's wife being a legend in her own lunchtime, whereby she believes that every sentence that she comes out with is of import, is of moment, is telling you something profound, deep, and that will change your life for the better. Of course, what she doesn't realise is how often she regurgitates the words of other people by virtue of her character trait acquisition. See Parts Passim, where I've demonstrated the number of times where she has utilised somebody's quotations and passed them off as her own, particularly on the very blog that she's talking about on this show, The TIG. Also, much of what she says is anodyne dross, word salad, but she doesn't realise this. She believes that she's hugely important, and she is led to believe by her narcissism that what she does and what she says really does make a difference. She fails to see how she pays lip service to things. She fails to see how she butterflies from one thing to the other. She fails to recognise the bandwagoning that she engages in, because her narcissism doesn't allow her to focus upon those sides. It only ever shows to her the upside of what she does. She goes on to say, well, you can talk about where did Rachel get that pencil skirt, but I'd also like to talk about... And then there's a pause. She can't remember what she wants to talk about. This is because it's not genuine. We know, of course, that she has spoken about women's rights and the UN, and she is involved in work with the UN. So it's not to say that they are a fabrication. They are real. But the distinction is, it's not genuine. Very little about the narcissist is genuine. Many people say, so are you telling me, HG, it wasn't real? And I'm saying, no, you didn't imagine it. It was real, it happened, but it wasn't genuine. So when the narcissist says, I love you, you really heard them say that. And the unaware narcissist truly believes they do love you. But because they're a narcissist, they cannot. And therefore, it is not genuine. Take two handbags, both apparently created by Louis Vuitton. They look the same, feel the same, weigh the same, perhaps even smell the same. But one is a genuine article, and one is counterfeit. That is what we do. We counterfeit the emotions, the responses, the words, in order to fit in and to ensnare you. So similarly, with Harry's wife, she, by her narcissism, is led to believe that all of these things are things that she engages in, truly and meaningfully. But her response demonstrates the lack of genuine quality. You might think, well, it's just a hesitation, she forgot what she was going to say. No. This is her narcissism, unable to reach the correct place because it doesn't come from a genuine place. It has to go and find it and remember and remind. Fortunately, she's helped out by the interviewer, who says women's rights, and immediately Harry's wife parrots that, women's rights, and then the narcissism kicks in. My work with UN Women, World Vision, or humanitarian trips. And she's able then to engage in the facade management. It then goes back to the more asinine stuff about her recipes, with more praise coming from the interviewer, who of course isn't giving Harry's wife any kind of hard time. It's not that kind of interview. It's not a forensic examination. It's simply talking to an actress about her role as an actress and some of her other interests. It's light. It's fluffy. The interviewer explains how the recipes are easy to follow, and Harry's wife then explains about the ingredient boards. You'll notice throughout all of this that left hand of hers waves around a heck of a lot. This is because Harry's wife regularly asserts control through physical means. You know from parts past him the way this has been done with Harry, with the grip of doom, the way that she puts her hand in his back, the way that she's always pouring at him. But she chops the air a lot when she talks, because also that's her narcissism demonstrating the way of trying to assert control over the listener by being demonstrative with her hand or hands, that she gesticulates a lot. She's not Italian, and therefore isn't prone to gesticulation in the way that they would do. But with her, it's part of the way that she's seeking to assert control over the listener. Let's now move on to the next part of the interview.
Yeah. See visually, like, step by step, done. Make your.
All right, let's talk about the UN. How'd you get involved? Because
from crispy chicken stew to the United Nations.
Chicken stew to the UN, because everyone needs to eat.
Yes, of course.
And now we'll talk about feeding your soul.
Yeah. Oh, that's good.
Good segue, right?
Very good segue. Well, funny enough, it was through the TIG, because I had written a piece about women's empowerment on 4th of July, I guess last year, just called Independence Day, and really sort of owning what your independence means for you. And I had received an email the very next day from a senior advisor at UN Women saying, we love what you're using your platform to do. Would you potentially want to start working with us? And I didn't believe it at first.
You were like, I'm a little busy, not this.
Yeah, I was like, I don't know, like a lot of the emails I see, and I thought it was a joke, but I wrote back, and then the next day I was on this conference call for a very long time, realizing that they were in fact serious about it, and I had said, well, you know what, I have a 1-week hiatus coming up from filming Suits. Would I be able to come and shadow an intern at UN Women headquarters for a week? And there was this very long pause of like, well, we have to get security clearance and all of that, but they did, and I did. I took that week off work to really understand the pillars of the organization and working closely there. So I went to Rwanda shortly thereafter to really meet with female parliamentarians, because Rwanda has the highest percentage of female parliamentarians of any government in the world. 64% of their government is female, which is astounding and amazing. And then I was just recently in Rwanda again for something different with World Vision. That was just in January, working on building new wells and water sources. And for me, it's a really easy lineation. I look at it and go, many young women and young boys, but specifically young women, aren't able to go to school because they're spending hours a day walking to get water for their families. So by fixing that one piece of the puzzle, you can see from a grassroots level, you're going, now they can stay in school, they can get an education, they have a much larger promise for a brighter future. So,
not to mention the environmental degradation that you're reducing by having clean water wells as opposed to dumping things in a river or...
Of course. And the water, and when we're saying they're walking hours a day to get this water, it's contaminated water. It's not, so it's like that one source can solve so many problems and be a source of inspiration. So, yeah, for me, I'm just really happy to have a hiatus with a few months off, because I'm able to work on stuff that really excites me like that.
What is it like going on one of those trips? Because I feel like we see the photos, but what is the experience actually like?
Well, my trip to Rwanda last year was very different, because it was just, it was primarily at Parliament. I did go to a refugee camp, though, which was my first experience of that. And I think it's being there is a very different experience than what you see on TV. Of course, it impacts you so much so that, this year I was back in Rwanda. I feel very connected to that country now. But being in these different villages, I think, the biggest takeaway for me, especially in my industry, is the contrast of the things that, you know, it just puts a different level of perspective on the things we take for granted and the things that we complain about, right? We're all going to have our days, and it's all relative, but I think there's something so anchoring about being able to have a hands-on experience in any kind of aid work or volunteer work you can do. It doesn't matter what you're doing. I think just any opportunity to help people that have less than you will change how you move in the world without question. I think everyone should do it. I'm glad Emily is.
Well done on surviving that section of some very significant industrial beige. The interviewer commences, of course, by saying, let's talk about the United Nations. And Harry's wife immediately interrupts with, from crispy chicken stew to the UN. Assertion of control over the host through belittlement. She again engages in that conspiratorial look to the audience and gets nothing in return, causing anxiety, and once again we see her playing with her hair. The interviewer carries on, wanting her bit of fame, it would appear, by saying, everyone needs to eat, and now it's about feeding your soul. Oh, that's good, compliments Harry's wife. Good segue, huh? Asks the interviewer. Very good segue, responds Harry's wife. But notice that when she responds, you have that fixed grin on her face, that rictus grin, whereas you can see in her eyes, which are hardened, what's truly going on is, will you fucking shut up and let me speak? The repeated interruptions there from the interviewer threaten Harry's wife's sense of control. She's not going to be in a position and run over and grab the tank top of the lady interviewing her and get a hold of Donna Friedkin and headbutt her into submission. She's not going to turn either to the audience and say, fucking hell, she goes on a bit, doesn't she? Do you think she's going to let me speak? Facade management won't allow that. So what she has to do is she has to sit in a position whereby in her head, her narcissism causes her to think evil thoughts about Donna Friedkin, whilst at the same time continuing to smile for the purpose of maintaining the facade. Harry's wife then goes into telling us an anecdote, which will be interesting to learn the provenance of this and whether it's accurate. She explains that, of course, she'd been beavering away on the TIG, and she had written some piece with regard to owning empowerment or something to do with Independence Day, etc. And then the very next day, lo and behold, she gets an email from a senior advisor at UN Women stating, we really like what you're doing by your platform. Now, were they really observing her platform and that this senior UN advisor just happened to be looking? Or might this be something that would have been arranged as a consequence of her publicity agents getting in touch and saying, Harry's wife really wants to do something with the UN? I suspect it would be the latter. And of course, her facade management recognises that such a grasping approach wouldn't go down well. It has to be about the mountain coming to Muhammad, that the UN approached her because she is the mighty and most exciting and most interesting Harry's wife. And as a consequence of that, she explains that they asked, would she potentially like to start working with them? And of course, we then get a dose of false humility as the management of the facade continues. I didn't believe it at first. I thought it was a joke. And then the next day we had a conference call. Now, this could have happened, but colour me sceptical. I suspect it didn't. I suspect this is another revision of history, and what really happened was that Harry's wife's publicity team got in touch with the UN and was shilling for her to be involved. And they said, OK, fucking hell, stop ringing us. We'll let her have some kind of role. So she then explains about how she goes to UN Women headquarters, she goes an intern and shadowing. And then we get her talking about her experiences in Rwanda. She mentions, of course, able to pull a statistic that 64% of their government is female. Of course, the reason for that is that most of the men were killed in the genocide, leaving the women with no option other than to be involved in that. I've also made mention, of course, in the past about her connection with the Rwandan leader is somewhat less than savoury, and somebody who is a supposed bananitarian might really ought to have looked at that a little more carefully. We then get treated to a really large dose of beige word salad, which embodies Harry's wife. She's asked really about what she takes away from the experience, and she explained that to begin with she was primarily at Parliament, but she did go to a refugee camp. which was my first time obviously being there. And of course it impacts you. And I was back again because I feel very connected to that country. I suspect you've never been since, though, have you? The contrast of the things, it just puts a different perspective. There's something so anchoring about a hands-on experience. Any kind of aid work, any opportunity to help people who've got less than you will change how you move in the world. What? Notice, she really doesn't say anything at all. And it's the superficiality of her experience, whereby she went to Rwanda because it made her look good. She went to Rwanda because it allowed her facade to be managed, and we'll come to the photo shoot in a moment. But the experience was so ephemeral for her, she can't really remember it. And it shows because she's not able to talk about it being a guttural, experience. There's no actual connection to it. She claims that she's connected because she thinks that that sounds good. But once again, with her, it's the words. And she can't even back that up by talking perhaps almost emotionally about how it impacted upon her in the way that somebody with emotional empathy would. She can't recall the sights, the sounds, the colours, the smells. There's no rich tapestry of recollection with Harry's wife because of her cognitive function and the superficiality of the way that her narcissism works. She uses all of these buzzwords. I feel connected, it's anchoring, hands-on experience, change how you move in the world, but it's all just beige marshmallow nonsense. There is no substance, no bottom to Harry's wife, and it looms large here. Now, of course, what she omits to talk about is what she really did when she went to Rwanda. And as you may recall from when I read to you Tom Bower's Revenge, and we'll return to the Mail Online for a little snippet here, Harry's wife brought suitcases of outfits and disappeared for hours with a fashion photographer during trip to Rwanda, explosive biography claims. Harry's wife brought a suitcase of clothes and insisted she could bring a Canadian photographer with her to Rwanda, an explosive biography has claimed. Writing in his new book, Revenge, Tom Bower detailed how the Duchess of Sussex was invited on the trip in January 2016 by World Vision Canada to be part of a film to promote the charity's work building water wells in the African country. However, Bower claims Harry's wife flew to Rwanda first class, was accompanied by fashion photographer Gabor Jirina, and had her own hair and makeup artist. Brenda Saminsky, a producer who'd been due to film the trip, could no longer travel to Rwanda, and a Canadian cameraman joined the group instead. However, Bower, who admits to speaking to people who were not close to Harry's wife for his book, claims that after filming with the children playing with a water tap, Harry's wife disappeared with Jirina to take photographs with some of the youngsters. This, of course, is the tourism porn, the white saviour complex that is often criticised, and there is a picture in this article of Harry's wife hugging a young black boy who makes her look whiter than white. However, Bower went on and said, at the end, Saminsky was puzzled. Celebrities using a desolate African village as backdrop for a fashion shoot was mind-blowing. This demonstrates, of course, at the time, her sense of entitlement, facade management, a lack of emotional empathy, that she would go to such a place which is conflict-ridden, that is left in a situation of children drinking dirty water, their lives have been blown apart, etc., and she uses it as a fashion shoot. And it's no wonder, of course, that she's unable in this interview, shortly after that, which I think it must have taken place only a matter of months after her attending. Let me double check. She appears to have gone, yes, January 2016, and this interview was around about May 2016. So this is a matter of months ago. And she can't conjure up any memories of that trip in any meaningful fashion. Why? She was too busy doing her own thing with the fashion shoot, and also because of the absence of emotional empathy that I have explained. Here, we see the contrast between what really works for Harry's wife, self-promotion, part of course, underpinned by the prime aims, and the fact that with no emotional empathy whatsoever, we get treated to the banal beige word salad because she can't pull up any genuine experience because of the absence of emotional empathy. Yet more revelations are going to come, so join me in the next part.